Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is PodTastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for listening. My name is Chris of the Chris and Christine Show podcast. You can find out all you want to know about that show if you want to look it up at chrisandchristineshow.com. And I'll put a link to that into the show notes. And welcome to 2023. If you just woke up in a coma and you're like realizing like what year is it? It is 2023. As I record this podcast, it happens to be New Year's Day, the very first day of 2023. We finally made it. Wow. Well, congratulations for making it this far. Now, do you think maybe you can make it a little further and might actually push out that new podcast this year that you were talking about all last December? It's like, I know you're like, yeah, I'm going to start a podcast. Hey, Joe, let's start a podcast together. I think today or this year, 2023 is going to be the year that I actually do it. So why not do it? Here you go. It is finally here, New Year's Day. Let's make that resolution to make a new podcast, start that podcast you always wanted to. I know you wanted to. Just do it. And if you need help, I'm here to help you out. So welcome to the show. So today on PodTastic Audio, I have a fantastic, fabulous VIP guest coming on the show later today. But before we get into all that, I just want to say that podcasting is quite amazing. It's an amazing tool that people seem to overlook, and the complexity of making a podcast, it's really not that hard to make a podcast. Like anybody really can do it. If I can do it, then you can do it. But I also want to say is that I like to keep things very flexible with my podcasting. I know that's one key thing when it comes to life in general. The more flexible you can be on almost anything really you do, the more powerful you can be, the more valuable you can be, especially like to a company or something. Like the more skills you have that you can do, or the more different hours of the day you are available to work. You know, companies love hearing about that. They're like, oh, great. You can work whenever we need you. Great. That's fantastic. Especially also if you have you're doing like an interview show and you have people coming on that come on at different times of the day. Like only say you do interviews, say 5 o'clock, whatever your time zone is, but you really pigeonhole yourself to what, different types of guests you could have, because not everybody is available at 5 o'clock your time. And one of the also important things about podcasting, I like to keep flexible, is my options and my availability as far as where I can actually podcast. And when I mean where, I mean physically where I can podcast. I know that most people probably have a computer at stationary somewhere. They might have like the Rodecaster Pro or maybe a mixing console of some kind, and everything sits right there. And they can't really move it out of that room. So everything they do is right there in that room. Now, there's one tool that I always talk about that everybody should probably have, just in case as a backup for situations like today. I'll get that in a second. But I love the Zoom PodTrak P4. Now, I don't use it all the time. But today, I'm using it right now. And the reason why I'm using the PodTrak P4 right now on this podcast is because this podcast is being recorded in our backup studio, Studio B, I like to call it, which really B stands for the bedroom. On this little desk I have here, I got my MacBook Pro sitting right here. I got a new backup, I guess a extra monitor screen. It's a portable monitor screen that connects to the MacBook through the little dongle port I have. I got this for Christmas. And of course I have my Zoom PodTrak P4 plugged into it too. I got my Rode pod mic sitting right here. I've got 3 of these pod mics in the house. So I use this one here with a little boom arm. It's very simple. I just hook it up to the desk and it's hanging right in front of me. I'm talking right into the thing and I'm recording right into Audacity right now. Now, the one thing I love about the Zoom PodTrak P4 is that it's portable. It runs on batteries. It sounds fairly good. I mean, it doesn't sound quite as good as maybe a Rodecaster or maybe a more advanced system like that. But I mean, for $150 or $200, whatever the cost is for this thing, you can take it anywhere. It runs on 2 AA batteries. In fact, it's running on battery power right now. You're hearing me talk to you through batteries right now. It's just how it's getting actually recorded onto the computer. So I love this thing. It's portable. Like I said, you can take this anywhere. So essentially with this setup right here, this MacBook and the Zoom PodTrak, I can literally and physically do a podcast anywhere. And I mean anywhere. I can have, say, me and two other people all live in the same studio, all with their own microphones, all with their own headphones. And in addition to that, I could have somebody come in via whatever source you want to use, whether it's Zoom or Squadcast or CleanFeed, whatever you want to do. I could have somebody come in. We can record the entire show live in one take, or however you want to do it, right here on the P4, or we can push it straight to the computer like I'm doing right now and record directly onto that thing. So it's a very easy way to do it. And I know you're probably thinking, hey, Chris, why do you have a Zoom PodTrak P4 and a Rodecaster Pro 2? Like, why do you need both of those? Do you need both of them? No, you do not need both of them. But the Rodecaster does sound better. It's got a few more bells and whistles, a lot more processing. It can handle heavier duty microphones, yada, yada, yada. It's quite an amazing device. I love the Rodecaster, but the Zoom PodTrak basically does a lot of the main features that you would use for the Rodecaster, like multiple microphones, multi-channel recording, things like that. It does all that stuff, but it's portable, and you can take it pretty much anywhere with you. That's why I love the Zoom PodTrak. I said I don't use it all the time. I do use it when I do move the MacBook out of the main studio and I put it in other places of the house. That's why I use it. And that's why I bought it. And like I said, I don't use it all the time, but when I do use it, like today, like days like today, and for the interview I had, it comes in handy because I literally can podcast from anywhere, which doesn't make you locked down to a particular location. You can podcast from a hotel room. You can podcast from, your kitchen, your outdoors, a park, your friend's house. It doesn't matter. Sky's the limit with this thing. And it's only like $200. So I highly recommend the Zoom PodTrak P4. In fact, here's what I'll do. I'll give you a link to it, to Amazon, in the show notes of this episode. So you can just click at the show notes and it'll show you exactly where to buy it on Amazon. A quick little link there. So you can pick up your cool little PodTrak P4. So you too can literally podcast from anywhere you want, like literally anywhere. So now that you know that the entire episode today has been recorded solely and 100% on the Zoom PodTrak P4, how does it sound? Does it sound okay to you? That's the thing, is if it sounds good to you, it sounds good to the listener, then that's what really matters, as long as it sounds good, right? So speaking of making things sound good, this podcast, I think I said this in day one, episode 1, was that my entire goal of podcasting, as far as audio quality goes, was to make sure the audio from my podcast sounded just as good as anything you heard on the radio. Like, I love radio and I love live radio and I listen to radio like every single day, probably while I'm at work a lot. I also listen to podcasts too, of course, but I'm always drawn back to the radio. There's something very simple about the radio, and radio is also a very powerful player in the way we consume our content. I should say audio content for that matter, but they're also getting their hand in the podcasting space too. So today I had the privilege and opportunity to talk to Erik K Johnson of the Podcast Talent Coach, but also what he does, he's been in radio for over 35 years, and he is the program director of iHeartMedia. So he's been on the radio for a long time. He's been on the air. He's been in charge of all kinds of things that go over the airways, contests, all kinds of fun stuff. He has had his hand in radio for a very long time, and now he also coaches people on how to make a better podcast. And more specifically, how do you take that podcast that you've already launched? Like, what do you do next with it? Well, you say you got a podcast up and running. Great. How do you take it to the next level to use your podcast to leverage your business to make sure that you can make money? How do you figure that out? Well, Erik knows all about that. He's been teaching people how to do that. So please welcome to the show, Erik K Johnson.
I am fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great, man. So Erik, where in the world are you joining me today?
Today and most days, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, right in the middle of the country. Born and raised in Omaha, spent my entire radio career here in Omaha, and that's where I live with my 2 kids and my wife.
Fantastic. Now, are you hit by that massive storm we just had?
We got kind of the tail end of the snow. Most of the snow went north of us, but we did get the temperatures. Like we got down to, I think a high one day was -7. So we got the crazy cold. We got a little bit of snow. I think we got maybe 2 inches or so. So we got a little bit of it, but the big snow went north of us.
Oh, well, now usually you guys get snow out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get a good dozen inches in a snowstorm occasionally.
Nice. Yeah, I'm down here in San Diego, and we don't get a ton of snow. Really
I wouldn't think so.
There is some in the local mountains, though. We do the high mountains. Probably, I think the peak is like 4,000, 5,000 feet in the local mountain ranges, and it does get some snow out there when it does get the snow. But it's like it's not as heavy like you have to like dig your car out kind of snow. It's more like it's white everywhere kind of snow. It looks pretty, that kind of stuff. And it causes a lot of crashes and accidents because nobody here knows how to drive in the snow. I mean, I don't
exactly. Shuts the city down when it snows.
That's right, man. Nobody goes that way, really. So you said you were in radio. How long you been in radio, actually?
Got into radio completely by accident when I was getting my degree in architecture. My brother worked at a radio station, and I was a broke college kid. They needed some help at the station, so I got a part-time job at the radio station just running the board on the weekends. Wasn't actually even opening the microphone. I was just running pre-recorded programming and really started to fall in love with radio. That was the late 80s. And I finished my architecture degree and stayed in radio because as getting my architecture degree, I took broadcasting for the non-major as an easy elective. I figured I'm already working at a radio station. How hard can this be? So I took that class. That class led to me becoming the music director at the campus radio station, all while getting my architecture degree. And I finished architecture, stayed in radio, and I've been in radio for almost 35 years now.
Now, when you were in radio, were you ever an on the air DJ?
Oh yeah, I still am. I've been on the air for. There's never been a time in my career where I've not been on the air. So right now, I program 4 radio stations. I'm the program director. So basically, everything you hear on the radio comes through me. I hire all the talent. I decide all the music, all the promotions, the contests. I oversee the commercial production. If you hear it coming out of the speakers, I had some hand in it, or my team did. I oversee that group. And then my counterpart on the other side is the sales manager, and she handles all of the sales, all of the commercials that come to the station. So I program 4 radio stations. I oversee our cluster here in Omaha of 7 stations. So I have 2 other program directors that work for me there. And then I oversee 35 stations in 7 markets as the area senior vice president of programming for iHeartMedia.
Nice. Do you do any of the iHeartRadio stuff out here in San Diego?
I do not oversee anything in San Diego. Just here in Iowa and Nebraska are my two markets.
Now, the next big question I have is how many iHeartRadio musical festivals have you been to?
I have not been to the festival.
What?
I'm not a big festival guy. I don't tend to go to many festivals just because of the sheer number of people. I did go to Lollapalooza this past summer just because Green Day was on the bill, and my wife's a huge Green Day fan.
Nice.
If she didn't want to go see Lollapalooza, we probably wouldn't have gone. I really enjoy a small club show. I love discovering a really cool band that I can go see in a club with about 100 or 200 people and just really have an intimate experience. I've seen a lot of great shows. I've seen Soul Asylum at a club. I've seen, back in the day, Better Than Ezra, Ben Folds, just fantastic bands before they're big. Bowling for Soup, Bare Naked Ladies, all those guys I've seen at clubs, and those are just so much more powerful for me than a large audience at a festival or something like that. There's just that disconnect. And I think that's why I like podcasting so much, is that it's that one-on-one conversation you're having with your listener rather than being on stage in front of a crowd trying to connect.
Right. Yeah, I get that. That is fantastic, Eric. I love radio. I've been a big, major fan of radio. I wanted to be in radio years and years ago. I tried it in college radio for a bit, but then life kind of happened and I kind of got sidetracked with other things. Next thing you know, you got kids and a family and a mortgage, and then you're like,
Right.
and all of a sudden podcasting comes back around. I'm like, well, wait a second, maybe I can get back into it and play around, because I know that the entry level to get into podcasting is extremely low, like a lot lower than people might think. But I know that. What do you think causes a lot of people to kind of like, I guess, stutter step getting into podcasting? Like, it's like they want to get into podcasting, but they kind of like wait and wait and wait. What causes people to do that, you think?
I think there's 3 really big challenges that prevent people from getting into podcasting. I just had a call earlier today with Leah. She's looking for some help because she's a creative. She knows she wants to start a podcast, but she has no idea how to do it. And I think as she and I talked about her struggles and her challenges, she told me she didn't have a plan. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know what microphone to buy. She didn't know how to record the show. There was a lot of that technical aspect of it that is unknown. And I think that prevents a lot of people from getting in. They let the tech overwhelm them. And recording your show really isn't all that difficult. If you get yourself a USB microphone that you can plug into your computer, that will allow you to record it. You can get some free audio software like Audacity, and you can record straight into that. If you can upload a photo to Facebook, you can upload your audio to your audio host, and then you just copy and paste the link to share it to all the platforms. Do not let the tech overwhelm you. And so many people do. They let the tech freeze them, and then they don't get started. The second challenge that a lot of people face is they don't understand how the podcast leads to something bigger. So many people want to launch a podcast and they want to get this big audience and go out and sell sponsorships to their show or something like that. And the sponsorship advertising model is a myth. It's just not going to happen.
Why?
For most people.
Why does it work so much in radio?
It works in radio because I have a staff of 20 people out on the street 40 hours a week selling radio.
Okay, but but radio also plays nonstop. I mean, with podcasting, I can just skip an ad.
Yes, right. And you don't have the time in your day to go out and sell sponsorships. Sponsorships have a ceiling in the amount of revenue you can earn. Like, how many sponsors can you put on your show? 4, maybe? If they're all paying you $1,000, which is astronomical.
Right,
You're only making $4,000 an episode, and that's it. There's nothing higher than that. So there's a cap to the amount of money you can make. And it takes at least 5,000 downloads an episode to attract any big sponsor.
I thought it was 10 to 5?
Only 7% of all podcasts have more than 5,000 downloads an episode.
Right. And I keep hearing these guys come to me and say, oh, I just need to get sponsored. Oh, I just need to get sponsored. I'm looking for sponsors. I need to get sponsors. But even if they had a sponsor, like you said, I mean, $1,000 sounds like a lot. I mean,
and it's not. Nobody's paying $1,000 unless you have a huge audience. It's a waste of your time chasing that sponsor dollar. Instead, sell either your own products or affiliate products. That way, every time a sale is made, you're earning money. So if you're promoting a product that you truly love, let's say you have a small business show, and you're promoting HostGator or a web hosting company, Bluehost, somebody like that. Now, every time somebody signs up for HostGator or Bluehost, you're making an affiliate commission. I would much rather see you make money that way than trying to find a sponsor, because your sponsorship's going to end. They're going to sign up for a month or 2 months or 6 months.
Is that how it works? It's like a contract?
And now you have to go find another one. So you're continuing on this circle, this cycle that's nonstop, and you don't have that kind of time. Instead, create an affiliate relationship. That affiliate relationship lasts as long as the both of you agree to it. Like, it continues on until one of you say stop. And so you don't have to go sell it or create it again. Now you just promote it on your show and you're earning revenue. So that's the second challenge. First challenge, we let the tech overwhelm us.
Right.
Second challenge, we don't have a system to use the podcast to grow our business. We get frustrated because the audience isn't growing fast enough. We're not making the millions of dollars that Russell Brunson told me we'd make.
Yeah.
And we get all frustrated and we fold tent and we go home after 7 episodes. We all hear that stat that podcasts tend to fade away after 7 episodes. Well, that's why we all had this pie in the sky dream that all these gurus are telling you, and that's simply not true. Put your head down, do the work, grow the audience, and build it over time. It's a long-term relationship play. And then the third challenge that comes about is they really don't have a proven system that they can follow, somebody that's been there and done it. They're seeing all these experts online try and show you how they've done it. And all they do is they teach you how to launch your podcast, but they don't teach you what to do with it. And you get the podcast up and running and you go, okay, now what? Now what do I do? Where do I go from here? You hit 7 episodes and you fade away. And that's because you're learning from people who are teaching you how to launch, not how to teach you how to create a successful podcast.
Okay, Eric. So say you got the podcast up and running. You're in episode 7. You're running out of ideas because your podcast. You're thinking like, I got this niche idea, whatever your podcast could be, and fill in the blank, doesn't matter. And then you get your 7 episodes in, and you like, how do you keep it going? Like, how do you keep going after that?
If you're running out of stuff to talk about, you're probably not talking about your passion. Too many people go into podcasting with a niche that they think other people want to hear about rather than going into a niche they want to talk about.
Ah, okay.
If it's something that you love, you will be able to talk about it for hours on end. And I learned this, oddly enough, out of Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It. He said, if you can sit down and brainstorm 50 different topic ideas in your niche in 10 minutes, then you're in your niche where you love. If you struggle to come up with 50 topic ideas in 10 minutes, you're probably not talking about your passion. If it's something that consumes your conversations, when you go to the bar with your buddies and sit around and have drinks, the conversation always comes back around to this topic, that's probably your passion. That should be your podcast. If you have to force it and come up with topics, you're probably not in the right wheelhouse.
Right. But there's always days where you're just like, oh, what am I going to podcast about today? You're kind of brainstorming, even though you might love this topic, but you're like, what is going on? If it's say like, I can imagine like all those like movie review show podcasts that came out like during 2020 when the theaters shut down. Now they have to go back to older movies or they have to go back to like Netflix stuff or whatever. I just can imagine that would be a struggle. Or even better yet, see like the cruise industry, like the vacation industry, that all shut down. So if you have a vacation podcast, like what do? You have to pivot and figure something out, I guess.
Well, you get creative. There's a couple mistakes podcasters make when it comes to content creation. The first is they get worried about talking about the same topic twice because they assume everybody's heard every single episode that they've ever published. And that's just simply not the case. Don't worry about going over the same content again. Look at Dave Ramsey, for example. Dave Ramsey runs the Dave Ramsey Show, and it talks about financial peace, how to get out of debt, how to stay out of debt, how to live on less than you make, and how to live a financially healthy life. And in Dave Ramsey's financial peace plan, there are 8 baby steps. Dave has been doing the same radio show for almost 30 years, answering the exact same question with one of the 8 baby steps on every single call. And he's done it for almost 30 years. It's the same thing. And he's the number 2 talk show in the country. So don't assume everybody has heard your stuff. And if they have, they probably love what you do and they don't mind hearing it again.
Right.
So determine what your big pillars are and then figure out how to creatively talk about those big pillars. How do I get started? How do I do it better? Who can I learn from? How can I learn it better? How can I do it faster? How can I do it cheaper? How can I get somebody to do it for me? If you take those questions and apply it to your pillars, let's say you have 5 pillars of what you teach, you all of a sudden have 25 different topics. You have half a year worth of episodes. Now do it again and just take a little different take on each one of them, add a little different context, and you're well on your way.
Nice. So what would you say to the person that, say, their podcast, everybody thinks like, oh, it's going to be, it's a hobby right now, but maybe later down the road, it'll turn into a business or a financial revenue of some sort. How do you tell people to make that transition from hobby podcast into let's make it a serious business podcast?
Start with the end in mind. When I talk with my clients and I teach them how to use their podcast as a powerful marketing vehicle for their business, the first thing you need to do is identify your real target client. Who do you want to help? What do you want to help them do? And why are you helping them do it? What's in it for them and what's in it for you? Once you figure that out, then you can figure out what it is that you're selling them to solve their problem. What solution do you have? Is it one-on-one coaching? Is it a course that you're selling? Is it a product? Is it software? What are you selling them? Then figure out where that sales conversation is going to happen. Is that going to be a one-on-one call with you, a webinar, a long-form sales video, or something else? Once you figure out where the sales process takes place, figure out what kind of lead magnet you can provide them that will get them to that sales conversation. Now create great content on your show that creates demand for your lead magnet that leads them down that path.
So what is a lead magnet for those who don't know?
Lead magnet is a small piece of valuable information that you give your audience in exchange for their name and email address. So when you build your email list, you build your email list by providing them this small piece of value. And there are various characteristics of what should be included in your lead magnet. It should be short and easy to consume. It should solve one specific problem. There are a variety of characteristics. Matter of fact, I have a free resource if I can give that to everybody. If you go to podcasttalentcoach.com/magnet, you can get 21 free lead magnet ideas, and it will give you the 7 characteristics of a powerful lead magnet.
Nice.
So it's super easy to create. What I highly recommend is you take a little piece out of your program, your coaching program, your course, whatever it is that you've already created, and use a little sliver of that for your lead magnet. So if you're walking your clients through a process of discovering something, and in that process you have them fill out a worksheet or a checklist or something like that, use that checklist as the lead magnet. And then you can say, this checklist is part of my overall course where I lead you to prosperity. And here's how I do that. Sign up for a call with me.
Nice.
So podcasttalentcoach.com/magnet, you can find those. It's 21 lead magnet ideas, and that's my lead magnet. So you'll enter your name and email address, tell me where to send it, and I will email you the link, and you can download it and start creating yours.
Well, what about the shows that say they're doing like the movie review show or or maybe just the generic interview show? Like, what would be a lead magnet for somebody like that?
Depends where you're leading your audience. What I need you to do is ask yourself, what do I want my listener to do at the end of the show? Ultimately, where am I taking my listener on this journey? So if I'm doing a movie review show, my lead magnet might be 10 movies you've never heard of that you absolutely need to see.
Okay.
3 horror flicks that won't have you covering your eyes every 15 minutes.
Okay.
3 horror flicks your girlfriend can watch with you. 7 of the best sports movies ever.
Gotcha.
People love lists. I mean, countdown lists like that. Absolutely. 3 of the are always use an odd number because it sounds more specific. So if I say, hey, I'm giving you the 9 best movies created by Henry Fonda, then it sounds more specific than 10. 10 sounds like, well, I had to fill 10, so I did, and everybody does top 10.
Really? I didn't think about that. What a trip.
But if you use 11, like, if it's 11, it's got to be specific, right? Because it's not 10, it's 11.
It makes sense. What a trip.
So use an odd number with that. But yeah, just think about what your fans are really into. Like, for example, with this podcast here, like 3 tools you need to get started with your podcast, or 7 experts that can show you how to take your podcast to the next level, or 5 of my favorite podcasting websites.
Nice. So once you get the information, you get their I guess their emails, their names or whatever, and that kind of stuff, and you store it in like a database of some sort. I'm sure there's lots of other programs out there to help you gather all this information. I think MailChimp is one.
Yeah.
And I think there's a few others out there that you gather all this stuff. And then from there, what do you get them on a mailing list or something? And kind of like, you mentioned it before, where you kind of like tell them, oh, the next episode's coming out, and you kind of string them along, right?
Yeah, so in your email, once they're on the email list, you'll deliver them the lead magnet, the thing they asked for, introduce who you are and who you help and what you help them do. And then you'll create a nurturing sequence. So you'll create a handful of emails that'll go out to them every day or two that just says, hey, here's another valuable piece of content. You're building a relationship with them. You're building rapport and showing them what you help them do. And then after 10 or 12 emails, you say, hey, would you be interested in going on the next step? And is that getting on a call with you or coming to your webinar or checking out the website or whatever that happens to be? If you sign up with MailChimp or Aweber or ActiveCampaign or some of those email services, a lot of them have training in there that show you how to build your nurturing sequence. They'll tell you what to write in there. And they're fantastic. And I don't think enough people use those resources. I built my nurture sequence straight out of everything I learned out of Aweber. I started with Aweber. Aweber was about, $20 a month maybe. And then I've now moved up to ActiveCampaign because it's a little more robust, and my email list is big enough now where it requires a little more customization. And so it costs me a little more, but it does a lot more for me. So, and they'll integrate right with, like Aweber has a landing page builder where like, where do I send them to get my lead magnet? Well, Aweber will have a landing page builder in there to help you build the whole thing. And I think MailChimp might as well, but there are a lot of services out there. Just find the one that works best for you.
And you said the different audience size of your list of emails, the bigger it is, you need to go with bigger programs?
Yeah, the bigger your list, the more they charge you. So Aweber will start and charge you a handful of dollars, and then once your list hits like 1,000, it goes up to the next level, and then once it hits 5,000, it goes up to the next level. So the more on your list, the more you're paying. With ActiveCampaign, I just like ActiveCampaign because the automation was a little more robust for me. Aweber has good. Aweber is a great place to start if you don't have an email list yet. I love using Aweber because I could build my automations in there, and it was more dummy proof. It helped you build the things, but it was less. You couldn't customize it quite as much.
Okay.
Where with ActiveCampaign, you have to kind of know what you're doing. And so I learned on Aweber. That was my training wheels. And then when I was ready to take it off and add an engine to the bike, then I moved over to ActiveCampaign, and it got me a few more bells and whistles.
Nice. So what do you think is the conversion rate when you get somebody on your mailing list to actually take action?
Well, it depends how good your mailing list is. Where did they come from? How much of a perfect fit are they for what you do, and what niche are you in? If you're in one of the 3 big niches, if you're in health, wealth, or relationships, and you're targeting a specific individual, like you're targeting middle-aged women who are looking for their next relationship after divorce, like that's a very specific niche, and everybody on your list are middle-aged women that have been divorced, then your conversion rate's going to be a lot higher than if you're like, how to land a date. Like that could be anybody, right? And so it's probably the conversion rate's probably not going to be as high there. So I would take all conversion rates you see with a grain of salt. You don't know who's showing up. You don't know how perfect it is. If you have a list of 100 people, but they are all right in your wheelhouse, your conversion rate's going to be huge. If you have a list of 5,000 people and they've come from a variety of different places with a variety of different lead magnets, your conversion rate's going to be much lower. Like my conversion rate right now has dropped because I've built my list with various lead magnets. I've used an how to interview lead magnet. I've used the lead magnet. I've
Yeah.
used resources. I've used all sorts of things to solve a variety of problems. So now when I make an offer for like my audience explosion blueprint, how to grow your audience, that's not going to appeal to my entire list. So my conversion rate's going to be much lower.
Got it. Hey, speaking of growing your audience, so what is your advice on how to grow your show?
Get on other podcasts.
Oh, like you were doing right now. Here we go.
It sounds so dumb when I say it, but podcast listeners listen to podcasts. So go get on other shows. So many podcasters, well, I'm growing through Facebook and I'm putting my YouTube videos up and I'm writing a blog every day and I'm sending my email out. And I said, well, people who want to watch video aren't your ideal target listener. You want people who listen to podcasts. People who read blogs aren't podcast listeners, they're blog readers. So stop doing all of those things and focus on getting on other shows. And they say, well, yeah, but if they're listening to that show, they're not going to listen to my show. Average podcast listener consumes 6 podcasts a week, 6 different shows every week.
Nice.
And there are 34% of podcast listeners listen to 11 or more podcasts a week. So just because they're listening to your show doesn't mean they're not listening to anybody else. There's plenty of hours in the week to consume everybody out there. And I run out of shows to listen to. I'm always searching for a new show to check out because I consume so many podcasts every week. I'm probably in the 11 plus club there in terms of number of shows I listen to every week. So get on other shows, find podcasts that are already speaking to your ideal target listener. Go partner with them, get on their show, get in front of their audience. And when you do, don't invite them to come listen to your show.
What?
Get them on your email list.
Oh, okay.
When you go on another show and you say, hey, come listen to my podcast, and they come and listen to your show, but they don't subscribe, if they don't come back, they're gone forever. You have no way to contact them again.
Right.
But if you get them on your email list with your lead magnet, now you can email them every time you have a new episode out and say, hey, the new episode dropped. Come check it out. By the way, subscribe.
Could you do kind of like the same thing with social media?
Right. Social media, though, the issue I have with social media is you don't own it. Right. My email list, I own. I can export my email list. And so if ActiveCampaign shut down today and went out of business, I have my email list and I can just upload it to Aweber or MailChimp and I'm up and running again. Where Facebook, you can't do that. If Facebook decides they don't like you today and you go away, then your complete audience is gone.
You lose all of those contacts, right? Everything's gone.
Exactly.
Same thing with Twitter and all of them the same way too. But I know that like you're saying that like if you have the contact information on Twitter and if they, or whatever it could be, if they follow you on whatever platform you're on and you're constantly posting out new episode this week came out, check it out, they would in theory see that, right?
They would. Yeah. I definitely recommend that you share it on social media when you have a new episode out. Just when you're on other podcasts, lead them back to your email list so you have that contact information and you can email them on a regular basis. With especially Facebook, when you put a link in your Facebook post, Facebook tends to squash it because they want you to pay them to boost it.
No way. They squash it?
Yeah, so the reach is dismal when you add a link in the Facebook post because they want you to pay them to share it, even with your own audience.
No way.
Which is absolutely crazy. So I highly recommend you build your email list. That's something that you own. You can nurture. You can have a relationship with them. If you're a fan of my Facebook page and you come to my Facebook page, there's going to be ads on Facebook and everything else that I don't have any control over.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I got to figure this email thing out. Like, I've never been big with like figuring out email lists or emails. I've always been like the social media guy, or like I'll have people's emails in my thing, but I won't be like I haven't figured out how to create a mailer or anything like that. You know, like I'm horrible at that kind of stuff. I need to really figure this stuff out, like you're saying, so that way I can keep like sending out information like, oh, you know, new episodes out this week, check it out, that kind of thing.
Well, the knock on email is that, well, nobody's reading email anymore. Everybody's on social media, or everybody texts. Nobody reads email. And I go, well, the one thing you have to have a social media account is an email address.
That's
Like,
true.
if you don't have an email address, you don't have a social media account. So you got to have an email address. And I send a daily email, send an email out every day. I'm usually sharing great podcasting information. And then in every email, I have a resource for you. So whether it's something I'm offering or one of my JV partners is offering or something to take your podcast up a step. But I'm usually always offering some great advice or great tips on how to make your show better. And I send it out every day. What people fail to understand is I don't expect you to read my email every day, but you have to see it in your email inbox every time you're in there to at least delete it. So my name remains top of mind. And when it comes time for you to get help with your content and use your podcast to transform your business, I'm the guy you think of because I'm staying top of mind. I'm in front of your eyeballs every day in your email inbox.
Gotcha. So you're always there. Yeah, your name is in the email, so you see it. And when you delete it or not, you're still there.
Absolutely.
So would the same thing be for social media too? If you're overposting, say, an episode?
It depends on if the social media platform is showing it to anybody. And that's if you go on your social media stats and you look at who it reached, like I have 7,500 people following the podcast talent coach page, and I'll post something up and it'll say seen by 30. And I'm like, how is it seen by 30 when I have 7,500 people following me? That makes no sense at all.
Well, would it help if you had certain hashtags maybe?
I don't know. I mean, you would think if they're following me, I would be in their feed occasionally.
Oh,
But,
right.
and it just doesn't happen that way. I've even tried doing Facebook Lives recently. I've been doing a daily Facebook Live in there, just kind of on my journey of where I'm going and where I'm headed. And just it doesn't get in front of a lot of people. This. I'm just looking at my Facebook page right now. The Facebook Live that I did on 2 days ago reached 32 people. Now I'm playing their game. I'm doing Facebook Live just like they asked me to.
Okay.
I have 7,500 people following the page and it reached 32 people.
Now, were those 30 people watched it live?
No, nobody watched it live. I maybe one person watched it live. Those 32 people just saw it on my page.
Interesting. So how would somebody leverage social media with their podcast to promote it?
You have to pay Facebook to promote it. They want you to pay to run ads or to boost the post in order to get it in front of people. The other way to do it is to get engagement. Facebook likes when people engage with your posts, so asking questions and stuff like that. But I haven't found the magic sauce that gets my posts in front of people. One of my mentors, Mark Mawhinney, he runs the Coaching Jungle, and Mark will post up a variety of things on Facebook that gets people to engage. What book are you reading today? What's your favorite podcast? Here's some funny. He puts memes up there all the time.
I love memes. I love memes.
So he gets engagement. And so people are engaging with his posts. And now when he posts his podcast episode, Facebook shows it to more people because more people are engaging with his other posts.
Okay, I got you. You got to play. So, like, if you're doing a podcast about, I don't know, whatever your niche could possibly be, would it be wise to maybe kind of throw other posts up there that are not particularly in that niche, but might get more eyeballs and more conversation flowing?
No, I would put it in your niche. So let's say you're in the movie niche, like we were talking about a little earlier. I would do regular posts on what's your favorite horror flick? Who was your favorite romantic actor? What was your favorite comedy from the 90s? What's your favorite spin-off TV show from a movie? What was your favorite sequel? And getting people to respond and interact with those. And then, every 10th or 12th post is, oh, by the way, I have a new episode out and we talk about great horror movies.
Gotcha. Yeah. Does Facebook allow you to do polls? I know LinkedIn does, and I know
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love polls on Twitter. I love the polls because they're very easy to click on a poll and then somebody can vote and things like that. And it probably does generate the little algorithm of, like you're saying, to kind of get your post up there. I would think the more people that vote, I would think kind of does that too. And you can post things like, favorite movie or favorite whatever, fill in the blank. It could be whatever. But I always think, like you said, try to stick to your wheelhouse. Like if your movies, stick something with movies and things like that.
If social media is part of your DNA, then by all means use social media to drive what you're doing. I'm just not on social media a lot. And so it becomes work for me to go get engaged on social media a lot of the time. So I don't use social media as one of my pillars. I love crafting an email and sending that out. I love my podcast. I love being on other stages. I love being on other shows. And so I use those as my pillars to get in front of other people. If social media is your jam, then by all means put it to use. Just understand that if you trip over the wrong rock, that social media can ban you as quick as they embrace you.
That is true. We've seen big time celebrities get kicked off platforms left and right, and then everyone seems to be leaving Twitter these days. Like it's everybody, I'm leaving Twitter, and then they stick around to see who saw what they said.
Right.
So things like that. But I always try to figure out every way, trying to figure out how to promote your show. And I heard one particular way. I don't know if this really works for everybody, but one particular way is word of mouth, like person to person. You ever seen that too?
Word of mouth is the most powerful way to grow your show. I saw a study at Podcast Movement that said the number one way people learned about a new podcast was through word of mouth. And it was like 47% of all respondents say word of mouth was how they discover new shows. A lot of people mistake word of mouth for being, you told me about it. That's not the only form of word of mouth. Word of mouth means I heard it mentioned somewhere. I heard another podcast mention it.
Okay.
I saw it mentioned on social media. Somebody mentioned it in their email. I saw it mentioned on a YouTube video. Somebody mentioned it somewhere.
Okay.
And a lot of times I discover new podcasts because I hear another podcast say, "Oh, I was listening to Harry Duran the other day and on his show, and he mentioned this," and I go, "Oh, I better go look up Harry Duran." Like when I first discovered Pat Flynn, I heard Pat mentioned on like a third podcast. Like somebody mentioned him, somebody else mentioned him, a third person mentioned him. I said, "Okay, I have to go listen to Pat Flynn." And, that was 10 years ago or whatever it was. That's how I discovered him because I heard multiple people mention him. If you want people to discover your show, get people talking about it. And if you want people to talk about it, do something worth talking about.
Oh, so that brings me to another question I have. So what in Erik K Johnson's idea of what makes a good podcast versus a bad podcast?
Your personality. You do. You're the only thing that separates your show from everybody else. Huh. If you're teaching the 6 steps to success, I can start a podcast tomorrow and teach your 6 steps to success and be the exact same podcast that you have. The only thing that's going to make your podcast different from mine is you. So you have to share your story. You have to share your journey. You have to build rapport. You have to share your personality. And so if you want to be different from every other podcast, then you need to figure out who you are and what your brand stands for. You need to figure out what your brand is going to represent and how you can bring that forth on your show.
So I know everyone says content is king. I think you might have said it's too content, but more than content alone is probably how you deliver it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Content is king wrapped around what you are and who you are. Are you the funny guy? Are you the straight guy? Are you the serious guy? Are you the tell it like it is guy? Are you the kick somebody in the butt and get them to move guy?
Right.
Are you the compassionate guy? Are you the shoulder to cry on? Like, what is your brand? What are you going to stand for? And everybody thinks that I got to be Howard Stern, or I got to be Rush Limbaugh. I got to be in your face. And that's not necessarily the case. Like if you listen to go back to Dave Ramsey, for example. Dave is like your older brother that's just going to tell you what you need to hear. Like he's not going to do it in a harsh, mean way, but he's going to be blunt with you. And when you need to pull up your big boy pants and get on the road, then he's going to tell you that. Where a guy like Dan Miller over at 48 Days to the Work You Love, Dan's a guy that has been there and done that. He's like your old uncle who just wants to encourage you to do what you want, and he's going to tell you what he's seen, but he's going to let you make your own decisions because you're a big boy and you can do that. But he's going to tell you what he's experienced and maybe give you a little advice and then get you on your way. But he's not going to kick you in the pants and motivate you. He's just going to inspire you.
Yeah, I know a lot of shows, like a lot of podcast shows that pop up, especially the interview show ones. They all try to mimic Joe Rogan. Oh, I got to be just like Joe Rogan. I'm going to copy his style. And my show is just, in fact, I was even going to be a guest on a show once a couple of years ago. And the guy even said in his description, my show is just like Joe Rogan's show. That's how I do my show. But why copy somebody else?
Right. You know what you are? You're a bad Joe Rogan. That's what you are.
Yeah.
If I wanted Joe Rogan, I'd go listen to Joe Rogan. Why would I listen to you? Like, don't be Joe Rogan. Don't be Howard Stern. Be you.
But some people don't want to do that. They don't want to. They think that they are. I guess maybe it's the imposter syndrome in them. They're saying, "Well, I'm nobody, and they're somebody, and everybody loves them, so I got to do what they do."
Talk to your friends and ask them what characteristic traits you have that really stand out. What makes you different from everybody else? What makes you you? If you had to fill in the blank and say, oh, he's the guy that blanks, what would you fill that in with? And start asking some people who you are and what makes you tick, and you'll figure it out. Like if you do a personality assessment or something like that, like you'll know who you are. I'm a guy, I've talked to enough people and coached enough people where I've learned my superpower is the ability to take a complex situation and distill it down into 1 or 2 sentences.
Nice.
Like I can listen to you talk for 5 minutes and then I can say what you just said in about 6 words.
Nice.
And you go, well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And I go, well, yeah, it just took you 5 minutes to say it. And I just said it in a sentence. So, and it's just it's the way my mind works. I have the ability to cut through all the crap and get to the meat and the heart of the matter. And so I'm able to help you take your strategy and like, well, I'm trying this and I did that and the other thing and I jumped 3 times on my right foot and then it was Tuesday and I take all of that and I go, well, here's what I see. You need to do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll get A, B, and C.
Well, Erik, let's talk about your services at the Podcast Talent Coach. So what do you do? What's your onboarding process like? All that stuff.
You bet. My main goal is to help coaches use their podcast to attract their ideal clients. So if you have a podcast and you're getting frustrated because it's not getting you the results that you want it to get, you expected the 6-figure payoff at the end of the day and it ain't happening. Let's figure out what's wrong with your strategy. And I offer a free podcast strategy call where you and I will sit down, figure out where you want to go, figure out where you are today, and then we'll develop a strategy to help get you there. And a lot of people think it's just a big sales call in disguise. At the end of the call, if we both like each other, we can surely talk about what I have to offer. And I have everything from free worksheets like I've given you today, all the way up to my Podcast Profits Concierge program where I coach you and we fully produce your show for you. And I have all sorts of stuff in between. So you don't know what's going to work for you, and I don't know what's going to work for you until we sit down and have a conversation to figure out where you are, where you want to go, and how we're going to get you there. And then if you want to talk about working together, we can do that. But we both have to like each other first. So
right.
I don't just work with anybody, and you don't just work with anybody. You need to make sure you're working with the right person. So you can apply to have a podcast strategy call with me if you'd like. You can go to podcasttalentcoach.com/apply. There's a form right there to fill out. Tell me what you want to talk about, where you want to go, and you and I will get on a call. They're usually about a 60-minute call. And we just kind of chew the fat for a while and figure out what your strategy is. And I help you find the gaps in your strategy to help you start attracting those ideal clients, bring them into your wheelhouse, start serving them with your superpower, and start actually making money with your show rather than chasing those ads and sponsors.
So what is the number one question people come to you? Like, what is the most common problem people present to you on that call?
2 most common problems. How do I grow my audience? And how do I monetize my show?
Yes. I guess you got to go one with the other, right? So you can't have
yes.
one. Yeah.
A lot of they work hand in hand. So if you want to monetize your show, let's figure out what you're doing to serve your audience, and then let's figure out how to get you a bigger audience. And so I have programs that do both. I have the Audience Explosion Blueprint, which will help you grow your audience in 6 weeks or less. And I have coaching programs that will help you monetize your show and develop it. I have pre-recorded courses that will show you how to turn your downloads into dollars.
Nice.
So I have a variety of ways to do that. It all depends if you want to do it yourself or do it with me or have me do it for you. So there's a variety of levels there. But the problem people have when they come to me and they're looking to build their audience or monetize their show is they have no strategy at all, or they have a flawed strategy. And my podcast strategy call is designed to find those flaws and help you refine them. For instance, we just talked about growing your audience, right? Well,
Yeah.
Every time I release an episode, I send it to my email list and I post it on Facebook. And I say, well, that's great, but all of those people already know who you are. How are you growing your audience talking to your audience? They're already your audience. You need to find new people to come to your audience. So how are we doing that? And that's what we talk about. And
Nice.
people go, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. I go, that's what I do. I help you
Right.
find those gaps. And we put those together and help you bridge the gap so you get where you want to go.
Right. And once they're there, you help them keep it going. You know?
Yeah. How do we take it to the next level, and how do we just make it huge? How do we make it, I want to make my podcast my business. Your podcast isn't going to be your business. Your podcast is going to drive your business. I listen to Shane Sams. Shane does the Flip Lifestyle podcast, and he and his wife Jocelyn, they run the Flip Lifestyle membership. It's a great membership, and they teach fantastic stuff over there. But Shane likes to tell people, I'm a podcaster. That's what I do. That's my job. I make my full-time living as a podcaster. And I cringe when he says that, because that's not true. Shane makes his full-time living selling the Flip Lifestyle membership.
Okay.
He does not make his full-time living being a podcaster. He creates a fantastic podcast, which is free for everybody to consume, and then he leads them over to buy the Flip Lifestyle membership. He's not making his money and creating a living because he's a podcaster. He's a podcaster who has something to sell.
Gotcha. What's the thing you always say about the podcast? You say something like, you don't make money with, or you don't make, what is it? You say,
yes. You don't make money from your podcast. You make money with your podcast.
Gotcha.
Your podcast is not your revenue generator. Your podcast is not kicking off hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
It's actually cost you money, really.
Right. But it's a marketing tool for whatever it is you're selling. There are very few guys like Joe Rogan who are creating a podcast, selling a bunch of memberships and people, or a bunch of sponsorships, and people are paying him a ton of money. But Joe's also on the road doing comedy stand-up and things like that, making a ton of money out there as well. Guys like Pat Flynn, he's a great podcaster, but he's making money with the products and services that he sells. John Lee Dumas is a great podcaster, but he's making money with the products and services he sells. You don't make money from your podcast. You make money with your podcast.
So it's
you
like a
use
tool.
it as a tool
Yeah.
in your business. Exactly.
Nice. So it's a tool to lead them to your business, which could be fill in the blank, whatever it is. I think that's fantastic. It's a great strategy, great idea. People come into podcasting not knowing what to expect or what to think. Like me, I didn't know what to expect with podcasting. I didn't know you could even use it to make money. I just assumed, like everybody else, that you just run ads on your show and that's how you make some money. And that's how, because everybody thinks of podcasting like the parallel to radio. In radio, I mean, you're in radio, that, ads pay for the business. I would think, how much of radio's income comes from ads, you think?
Almost 100%.
Wow, 100%.
I mean, there's sponsorships that we sell. Like if we do a contest, we're giving away $100,000. You can be the sponsor of that contest. So it's a $100,000 giveaway presented by Podtastic.
Right.
So it's not necessarily an ad, but it's a sponsorship. But most all of it comes from either ads on the radio, ads on the stream, ads on our digital platforms, things like that. So and the problem with podcast industry is that so many people want to sell ads and sponsors, and it gets the agencies to treat your podcast like a commodity, just like they treat radio. And there's a huge difference that podcasters miss when they're selling their ads and sponsorships, which is another reason I really dislike them. When you buy radio, there's a thing called cost per point, which means I'm going to pay you a particular dollar amount per 1,000 listeners you have to your radio station. And that's usually somewhere around, I don't know, let's just say $40. So for every 1,000 listeners you have, I'm paying you $40. Okay. So if you have 10,000 listeners, I'm paying you $40 per 1,000. So I'm paying you $400 a commercial. Right? That's a lot. Right now, commercials are usually around $100 in this market anyway. So it's $40 per 1,000 because broadcasting is a mile wide and an inch deep. So if you run your ad on a broadcast outlet, TV, radio, that kind of thing, you're only reaching a fraction of that audience that wants what you have. So let's say you're watching your favorite show and a commercial for Bud Light comes on. Well, only a fraction of the audience is going to be Bud Light consumers. There's going to be people who only drink hard liquor. There's going to be wine consumers. There's going to be people who don't drink at all.
Right.
There's going to be people who hate Bud Light and like Busch Light. So you're only reaching a fraction of the people that will consume Bud Light. So you're not going to pay for the entire audience. You're only going to pay a particular amount per 1,000. Podcasting is not a mile wide and an inch deep. It's an inch wide and a mile deep. So if you're on a podcast that is talking about healthy cooking, everybody that listens to that show is interested in healthy cooking.
Right.
Now, if you're selling something to a healthy cooking audience, maybe it's a better pan spray, or maybe it's a special spatula, everybody listening to that show wants what you have to offer. They're all in your market.
Nice.
So you can't treat that audience like a broadcast audience. But the agencies and the people on Madison Avenue who want to come out and buy podcasts for their sponsors treat it like broadcast audio, and it's just not the same. It's not the same. And there are big companies out there that are creating these podcast networks, and they're selling it like radio, and it's doing the industry a disservice because it's simply not the way people listen to podcasts.
That is so true. It is true. Hey, I was going to say about the ad price for radio versus podcasting. Does radio pay more per ad?
When you're out selling ads, you mean?
Yeah, like the cost for, you said it was $40 a commercial on radio per listen?
Cost per point is around $40 per 1,000 listeners.
Per 1,000 listeners. So would that be in the far as the podcast space? In
the podcast space, they're trying to buy it at the same rate. They're trying to spend $35 or $40 per 1,000 listeners.
Wow!
And you're just not comparing apples to apples. A podcast listener is worth so much more than a broadcast listener, because let's say 10% of a broadcast audience is interested in what you're selling. Like, hey, look, it's the new Mercedes. Well, I'm not buying a Mercedes. I'm not interested. So if 10% of your audience is interested in that product and you're paying $40 per 1,000 listeners, that should equate to $400 per 1,000 listeners on a podcast, because everybody's interested.
Right, yeah.
But they're not doing that. They charge the exact same cost per point on podcasting as they do on radio.
Yeah, maybe they haven't figured it out yet. They're still working out the bugs.
Right. Well, and the ad agencies don't want to figure it out because they want to treat you like a commodity. They want to buy your show just like my show. And they're two different audiences and two different success stories.
Yeah. Well, this episode's been quite a success having you, Erik K Johnson, on the show today. I really, really appreciate this, man.
It has been a blast. I enjoyed the conversation, and man, we talked about everything. It was great.
I know, jam-packed show, man. So, Erik, where can everybody find out all about you and all your wonderful stuff?
Head over to podcasttalentcoach.com. That's my website. Right there on the front page, if you do podcast interviews, right on the front page of my website, I have 17 of the most powerful interview questions ever. And you can download that. Those are the same questions I use to interview George Strait and Blake Shelton and Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift and all of the people that I've interviewed on the radio over the years. Those questions there, they can be refined and molded to any guest that you have on your show. And you can take those interview questions and get your guests to tell you amazing stories. You'll have your guests saying, man, nobody's ever asked me that before. This interview was so great. So it's at podcasttalentcoach.com. You can find all of my coaching information. You can find information there on my editing services. You can go there and find how to apply to have that strategy call with me. That's kind of my one-stop shop there.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, Erik, thank you so much for stopping by today. I really, really appreciate this. You have yourself a great, fantastic new year and new rest of your week.
Thanks for having me. I truly appreciate it, and Happy New Year.